Today I am going to be making, I forgot what they're called. Today I'm going to be making Almond Poppyseed Scones. Y'all loved my last recipe vlog, so I figured I'd do it again, but this time I would bake something. So I'll just take you through the process and then show you the end product. Hope you enjoy. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is add my dry ingredients to my mixing bowl. I'm kind of gonna have to squat down. So I'm gonna add my dry ingredients to a glass mixing bowl. If you have a food processor, you can do these next few steps in that, but a food processor is one of the only kitchen gadgets I don't own. So we're gonna do it this way. It works perfectly fine. You'll see right now I already have 1 cup of flour in this bowl. That's because I wanted to show you guys myself pouring it all in, but I didn't want to use another bowl and get it dirty. So I have 1 cup in here and 1 cup right here. So I'm going to add 2 cups of flour total. Remember, 1 cup in here, 1 cup in here, to a large mixing bowl. I'm going to add 1/3 cup of organic granulated sugar. Certainly you don't have to use organic if you don't want to, but I am. A tablespoon of baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then we're gonna just mix this all together. Make sure there aren't any chunks or clumps. Obviously you don't have to use this tiny mixing spoon, but I am all about doing as few dishes as possible. So once it's all mixed up, we can move on to the next step. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take 1/2 cup of butter. And use real butter, people, don't use margarine. It does not work the same. Also, it's made of a lot of really funky oils. So we're gonna take this cup of butter, 1/2 cup of butter, I'm sorry, and we're just gonna cube it up. So I'm just using a sharp knife to do this. They really don't need to be super even though I'm like moderately OCD, so I like to make sure that they are. It truly does not matter. We're just gonna cube this up, and then once it's cubed up, we're gonna stick it straight into our dry ingredients. And we're gonna break it up and integrate it with our hands. If you're wearing rings, take them off because butter will get everywhere. We're gonna break this cubed butter, this kind of the size I use. Oh, drop that on the counter, here you go. We're gonna stick it all in here, and we're gonna break it up into our dry ingredients until this mixture here feels like the texture of wet sand. So we want to integrate all of this butter without using a blender or anything. This is what's going to make our pastry really flaky and delicious, in my opinion. If we skip this part, we get weird clumps of butter or not enough butter in each bite. Or if we were to melt this beforehand and not break up the chunks of cold butter, our scones would be really thick and dense and just not the right texture at all. You could use a large metal whisk to do this as well, but I just do not find that it works as well. So just keep doing this until you get that wet sand-like texture. All right, so I've set aside my dry ingredients that now feels like wet sand. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mix 1 egg, half a cup of cream, heavy cream, which honestly I should have put this in here before I did the egg just for accuracy's sake, but we're just gonna do our best with this measurement because I kind of did it backwards and it'll be fine. Baking is a science, so you really do want to get the right measurement. So I would advise actually measuring it correctly. However, I've made these before, so I feel pretty all right about the way I just did it. So we have our egg, we have our cream, and then we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of good almond extract into this. And we're gonna whisk it all together so that it's fully integrated. It's kind of gonna change color a little bit because obviously the yolk of the egg is getting beaten. And it smells absolutely unreal. It smells so good because of that almond. So you just wanna do that till it's fully integrated. All right, and once we have that integrated, make sure it's really well combined. We're gonna mix that with our dry ingredients. Make sure you get all of it. And we're going to add in our 1 tablespoon, seems like a ton, but it's not, of poppy seeds. If you're using a food processor, you wanna be careful because these poppy seeds will break up. So you wanna mix until just combined. If you're not using a food processor, I probably wouldn't use a whisk for this mixing because it's gonna get all stuck in these little prong things in the whisk. So I just like to use a silicone spatula. So we're gonna mix this all up until it's really well combined, but we don't wanna overmix. Again, that's why we're not using a hand mixer here. And at this point, it's gonna start to become a dough. All right, after we have this all really well combined, we're gonna kind of gather it all together. This is, even if you're using a food processor, at this point you're done with your food processor and you need to use your hands. So we're gonna get all of this dough out of your bowl or your food processor, whatever you're using. And we're gonna shape it into a ball like this, okay? We're gonna stick it, usually I would use like a silicone mat, which actually I'm gonna grab real quick. Okay, so I've got my silicone mat here. I'm gonna take my ball onto my silicone mat. I'm gonna squish it out, and I'm going to make this a square to the best of my ability. About 7 inches across. Well, it's a square, so all the sides are the same. So we're gonna make it a square. You want it to be even everywhere because, as I'm sure you can assume, we're gonna cut our scones out of this. So we want it to look like this. You see that? A square, okay? And then you're gonna take a butter knife, works really well, particularly if you're working on a silicone mat, you don't wanna, scratch it. So now we're gonna cut this into a 9-inch grid, which just means we're making 9 squares. So I'm gonna put vertical lines and then 2 horizontally, and that will give me my 9. And then we're gonna cut each one of these squares diagonally to create 2 triangles. So these are mini scones. Okay, so when you're done shaping them, they're gonna look like this. Because I like doing as few dishes as possible, I bake them in 2 batches. Moreover, yours might look a little bit prettier than this because since I'm recording, some of my butter got a little bit soft, which just made them kind of sticky, and butter's just harder to work with when it's not super cold. But that's definitely not any kind of like big issue. So now my oven's preheated to 400 degrees. I am going to brush the top of each scone with a little bit of cream. I'm going to sprinkle some large crystal sugar on top and place some slivered almonds on top. So I'm going to do that real quick and then I will show you what it looks like. Okay, so my baking sheet looks crazy because of the melted butter. But this is what they look like after I sprinkled each one with raw cane sugar, put some almonds on top, and now I'm going to pop them into a 400-degree oven. Ooh, I'm making my way. For 15 minutes until they're golden brown. scones are all cooked. You will see they are all really different sizes and not that pretty. I mentioned earlier that baking is a science, and then I also mentioned that my butter got warm as I was videotaping this, and that is the size difference. So this is the first scone I made. So it's one of the smaller ones, weirdly shaped still, but it held its shape. This is the last scone I made, and because the butter was warmer, it just expanded. So these are not pretty, but they will taste good, and this is kind of just part of baking, guys. Sometimes it does not turn out as pretty as you wanted it to, but just go with it. So now I'm gonna make my glaze that I'm gonna pour over the top of this. So I'm gonna mix it up real quick, and then we'll do that. So for this glaze, I'm gonna mix up half a cup of cream, half a cup, I measured it a second ago, here we go, half a cup of powdered sugar, really healthy, and then 1/4 teaspoon of both vanilla extract and almond extract. I'm gonna whisk it all together until it's the right consistency. If it's not the right consistency, I'm gonna add milk, not cream. Cream will not thin this out like you want it to. I'm gonna use a fork. Normally I would use a whisk, but my whisk is dirty and I don't wanna grab it because I'm trying to move quickly because the baby is waking up from his nap. So you just wanna do this until it's smooth. We're gonna put it in either a piping bag or a Ziploc bag, and then you're just gonna drizzle it over the top of each scone. So it's really easy. So then we're just gonna snip the end off of this. Maybe, if my scissors will cut. I'm also using my left hand, which makes this exceedingly challenging. All right, please hold. All right, and then we're just gonna drizzle over the top, which I cut a hole that's way too big, but you get the gist here. So again, these do not look as pretty as they could, but there it is. Whoa, I just spilled it all over the counter over here, so here it is. Here are our scones. Enjoy.